What's up, you guys? The Curious Owl here, and welcome back to another book review. So today I am doing a spoiler-filled review and discussion of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the second installment of the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. Now, if you're not familiar with what this installment entails of, essentially it is Harry's second year at Hogwarts now, and before he goes off to school, he is met by a house elf named Dobby who tells him that Hogwarts is in great danger and Harry should not go back to Hogwarts. Otherwise, he will be subject to some awful experiences there. And although Harry doesn't really listen to him, he does find out that there are some very strange things happening. Students are being petrified, particularly students that are mudbloods, or essentially are not real wizards but come from either half wizard families or no magic from either side at all and are still able to go to Hogwarts. Harry, Ron, and Hermione essentially have to figure out what is going on, who is doing this, why are they doing this in the first place, and what can they do to stop it. Now, as many of you guys know, I am doing a reread of the entire Harry Potter series because it has been 10 years since I have actually read the books. I've seen the movies many times. They're some of my favorite movies of all time, but it's been so long since I've read the books that I wanted to take the opportunity to actually reread through them. However, there are a lot of things that I realized when reading this book that I had questions about that either I didn't understand or I had questions about why they weren't incorporated in the movie. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from the very beginning of the novel and just run through a list of questions that I made over the course of the novel that I kind of want you guys to discuss with me in the comments below, because really there are some things that I think need to be talked about, or were just questions that I would like some clarification on from my fellow Harry Potter people. Now, as far as really like my review of this, honestly, I gave it a 5 out of 5. The writing style wasn't that different from the first book. However, there is a noticeable change in the tone as there is some very dark magic starting to arise in this second book. But so one of my first questions is, in the very beginning of the story, when Harry is at Diagon Alley with the Weasleys and he's at the bookstore, he's just met Gilderoy Lockhart and he's just formally met Lucius Malfoy. Malfoy slips the diary into Ginny's cauldron. How exactly did he get the diary? That was something I never understood. I could assume that it was a treasure of Voldemort's that he kept, because in the book they talk about how he goes into Nocturne Alley, into the shop where he can sell these curios and things of that nature, and he brings in a lot of things that contain dark magic. So my guess is that it's possible that this diary, which was Voldemort's, was given to him for safekeeping because Voldemort had placed his Horcrux in it, which we realize later on in the series. But my wonder is how did he get the diary specifically? Did Voldemort give it to him a long time ago before the overtaking of all the wizards? Did something happen to where Voldemort had told him, you need to take this after he was destroyed? Where in the timeline exactly did Lucius get this, and how did he get it? Because that just was never truly explained in the novel. One of the things I wish that they would have included in the movie is the fight between Lucius and Arthur Weasley, because that was so freaking good. I was so excited to see Arthur really stand up for himself and for his kids. I could not believe that Arthur Weasley would actually do something like that, because he's so nice, he is so sweet and so kind. I think it would have been such an amazing scene to actually film and to have choreographed and everything. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even begin to explain to you how cool that would have been to have seen that in the movie. Something that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more in the book, though, was more on the raids and Arthur Weasley's job, because in the book they talk about how Arthur Weasley is a part of a group at the Ministry where he collects Muggle artifacts and he studies them. However, he also has to go into wizard houses or even Muggle houses to find bewitched items that could cause damage. So I would have liked to have known a little bit more in terms of the raids, especially the raid that happens at the Malfoy household, because I would have liked to have seen kind of Arthur going through the process of looking at the items and things of that nature, so we could kind of get an idea as to how the process works when you try to find bewitched item. Another part I wish would have been included in the movie is the Death Day scene with Nearly Headless Nick, where he invites Harry, Ron, and Hermione to essentially like his birthday party, but it's his death day party, the day he died. This ghost, who is the head of the Headless Hunt, they come out and they make fun of Nearly Headless Nick because he's nearly headless and not completely headless. The scene itself was so cool to see more kind of to the character of Nearly Headless Nick, and I think that would have played in really well with the story in the movie. And I don't know, just something about it I thought was more interesting to have in the movie than it would have been to leave it out. One thing I really did not get was, why did Snape side with Harry, Ron, and Hermione when Mrs. Norris was found? Why did he say that it was possible they could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time? How would he not have just said, oh yeah, they did it, because he had a vendetta against Ron and Harry in the very beginning when they come to school and they're nearly expelled from school for driving the bewitched car. How did he not think to just all of a sudden harp on them and tell them that they are expelled? Like, that didn't make sense to me. However, it goes back to my question of, in the first book, of kind of the reasoning of why Snape really defends Harry and why he protects him. And I think I may have mentioned this in my first review of the Sorcerer's Stone. I can't remember, but it's something to the effect that essentially Snape feels guilty about having been a part of Voldemort's army and then having seen Lily die, and so he's protecting Harry as a way to make amends with the fact that he didn't get to protect Lily. And I don't know, I highly doubt that. This is one of those scenes where I'm like, there's no way that that's just to protect him because of Lily. I think he's just trying to play his cards right, and he's trying to not seem like a total bad guy. Okay, one question I also had is, why are there always spiders around the bodies? I don't understand that. Are they just kind of all over the place, and then when the basilisk comes, do they just skitter away because they are afraid of the basilisk? But why are they always seeming to be around the bodies? Are they just flocking over there to get some meat to take back home? Why was Justin Finch Fletchley never incorporated in the movie? There was a guy that I think was supposed to represent Justin Finch Fletchley, who was one of the boys that got petrified, that was from Hufflepuff. He had such a bigger role involved in the book than he did in the movie, because he almost kind of like wanted to be friends with Harry, but for some reason he kind of like drifted away, and Harry got kind of concerned because he thought that he was becoming really good friends with the guy. And then with the dueling club, when Harry tries to get the snake away from Justin, he thinks that Harry is messing with him and that he's egging the snake on to attack him. So in the book, when Hermione asks about the Chamber of Secrets and the basilisk, it is Professor Binns who tells them about the Chamber of Secrets, not Professor McGonagall. However, I think because we are already familiar with Professor McGonagall, they did that in the movies so that we were familiar with it, and it would seem to kind of have a different tone to it, because in the book, Professor Binns was the history professor who was a ghost, and he was very dull, he was very dry, he really wouldn't tell anyone anything. So I think to make sure that the scene was still alive, the screenwriters had essentially placed McGonagall as the person to tell them about the Chamber of Secrets, because I think that it would have come across as more kind of lively as opposed to having Professor Binns, who was very dull, talk about it. I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the character of Dobby the house elf, because I love how he's so protective of Harry and how he just wants Harry to stay alive, and he wants to just do good despite working for a household that is so evil. But at the same time, he nearly kills Harry every single time he tries to get him to get away from Hogwarts. Another scene I think would have really been funny to include in the movie is the scene where Harry and Ron create a diversion in their potions class so that Hermione can go and get the ingredients they need for the Polyjuice potion. That would have been so funny to watch, because they use one of those little firework crackers that Ron's brothers Fred and George have, and he makes it explode in one of the cauldrons, and it would have just been so funny to see that actually happen in the movie, because it was so funny in the book, and would have kind of given some interesting look at how they were able to get a lot of the ingredients for the Polyjuice potion, especially since the book that contained the Polyjuice potion was in the restricted section of the library. And there's a whole ordeal of how Hermione is able to get into the restricted section by essentially talking to Professor Lockhart. So in terms of the dueling club that it was incorporated in the Chamber of Secrets, I have more of a question as far as kind of to help do some world building in terms of Hogwarts. So the dueling club was created by Lockhart as a way to kind of help teach more things about defense against the dark arts. Were there any other clubs that were involved in Hogwarts that were pertaining to specific classes? Like, for instance, there's Quidditch, which is its own kind of club because it's a sport. And there was the Dueling Club, which was to help aid with defense against the dark arts training. So were there any other clubs, like a potions club or a charms club, or what kind of other organizations were going on, like extracurriculars outside of the classes that would have helped with teaching the students a little more? Would it have taken away too much from the actual classes? Like, that's something I would have kind of liked to have known, just to kind of see how the school was kind of built up. There's another character from Hufflepuff that I think really should have been incorporated in the movie that was in the book, and that is the character of Ernie, who essentially believes that Harry is the reason that there are students being petrified in the school. He thinks that because Harry speaks Parselmouth after witnessing it at the dueling club, that he is the heir to Slytherin. I think that would have been interesting to have seen in the movie, because it would have given Harry an idea as to the fact that he is being seen as a suspect. And that brings a lot of anger and a lot of confusion to him, because he starts to kind of question his identity and who he is, and if he's really cut out to be in Gryffindor, and if he really should have been in Slytherin. And so I think incorporating that in the movie would have been really cool for us to see that although people think he's the chosen one, people also are afraid of him because of the amount of power he has involved in him that was able to take down Voldemort. Something that actually another booktuber had talked about, Emma Books, I'll leave her channel down in the description, something she had discussed in one of her recent videos is the idea of the Polyjuice Potion. And she talked about how the Polyjuice Potion has you take on the form of somebody else by incorporating their hairs into the potion. Her question though was, does that mean you also take on other physical ailments of them? Like, for instance, Harry has to wear glasses, but when he changes into Goyle, he can see perfectly fine. So that kind of confirms her theory that, you know, when you take a Polyjuice Potion, you don't just necessarily turn into the person as far as their physical attributes, but you also take on their ailments and their sicknesses and all kinds of different things about them, which is interesting because then begs the question that she had, which is, if you are a pregnant person and somebody makes a Polyjuice Potion to turn themselves into you, do they actually end up having a fetus, or is it just a whole stomach full of hot air to represent that fetus? That's a really interesting question. One of the things that I didn't understand in the book came to when Harry goes into the past to find out about Riddle and his involvement in finding out about the Chamber of Secrets being opened 50 years prior. And he apparently knows that Hagrid has Aragog, which I don't know how that would have happened. How did Riddle really know about Aragog in the first place, and how did he know that Hagrid was taking care of it? That was never explained. It was basically just you saw him leave the current headmaster at the time and then go down to the dungeon to find Hagrid with the spider and basically tell him he needs to give it up and he needs to admit that he's the one that let this monster loose on the children. Which, if you've read the book and you've seen the movie, that's not true. Hagrid did not set any monster onto these students. It was Riddle. He opened the Chamber of Secrets and let out the basilisk, which ended up killing a student. And I just don't understand how he would have known about the spider in the first place unless he was good friends with Hagrid. Along those same lines, how did Hagrid never mention that he was friends with Voldemort 50 years ago, or he knew who he was? Why does he never express that in the books? I think that that would have been such an interesting story for him to tell about, you know, how he saw Riddle go from this really stellar student to becoming so incredibly dark, because he was a year 3, the year that Riddle was a year 6, was a prefect, and basically had let loose the basilisk in the school. And so I would have liked to have seen, you know, Hagrid talk about his relationship with Riddle. There you guys go. Those are the questions and things that I want you guys to discuss down in the comments as far as Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Also, you can leave me some links to maybe some websites or links to theories that may have answers to those questions I have, and discuss your answers with each other down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, if you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye, guys!